Hi, I'm Michael Howe with Gluware. In this demonstration, we're going to be using a pretty complicated use case that is a multi-vendor TrustSec security policy use case around auditing the current state of a network, then determining if it fails an audit of current determined state, then we'll initiate with ServiceNow and ultimately automate a remediated change. What we're going to focus on this demo in terms of a highlight around ServiceNow are the ServiceNow capabilities in the workflow that include a CMDB sync. So Gluware will be updating device parameters, and that change will be synchronized to the ServiceNow CMDB. We'll also take this use case through a change approval process, opening up a change request, updating a change request, waiting for the change to be approved. Once it's approved, implementing it, and then doing a final update on it as well. So let's move on to the demonstration. So here we are in a Google Chrome web browser, and we're going to get signed into the Gluware web user interface. Signing in is going to return me to the last application I was in the app suite, which is my dashboard showing me the devices in this org. So just a couple notes in that Gluware, happens to be an on-prem system running on a private network. Gluware can be hosted as a virtual machine or run in a cloud. It is multi-user with role-based access control, so I'm signed in using my rights and permissions. And it is multi-tenant, what we call Gluware orgs, and I'm navigated into a particular demo lab that has multi-vendors. You can see in this demo, we'll be automating Cisco switches, Cisco Meraki, which is an API interface, and Arista switches via API as well. So let's move right into Network RPA and get started. So I've navigated into Network RPA, and we're going to look at a workflow that's already been built and walk you through it based on the use case I described in the slide. So what you see here in Network RPA is the workflow editor. This is the drag and drop canvas that provides process automation. As you look at the Gluware applications from Device Manager, Drift and Audit, OS Manager, Config Modeling, and more, these applications are essentially deconstructed into tasks, giving me the ability to perform Device Manager tasks, Config Drift tasks, Audit tasks, Config Model Editor, which is our config management, Data Explorer, and more. So what I'm going to be showing you or focusing in is the use case around the integration with ServiceNow. So just a couple quick notes here is we're setting workflow context. This enables variable management through the workflow as we maintain data captured from third parties, like in this case ServiceNow. We will be looking at the devices, capturing configurations, and at this point, this particular task will be updating device parameters. So just for demonstration purposes, we're updating the description on devices in Gluware. This field happens to be defined as a field that Gluware is the source of truth for. So in the next task, the first ServiceNow integration task, we're going to be performing a ServiceNow CMDB sync. So what this is going to do is synchronize the ServiceNow instance with the data from the Gluware side so that Gluware is updating certain fields in ServiceNow and ServiceNow is updating certain fields in Gluware. Just to talk to that quickly here, let's look at the ServiceNow tasks available. So I can search all of my tasks, and I can see I have two categories of ServiceNow tasks that are pre-built I can drag and drop in. One category is the CMDB sync. So this is literally a sync operation. Again, anything that has changed on either side will be pulled or pushed depending on what you've determined to be the source of truth for each given field. And then we have the one we're going to be diving in a bit further, which is the ServiceNow ITSM. So you see tasks around change requests, incidents, and problems that mostly involve a creation, update, and let's say request for approval. So these are, again, the pre-built service connector for ServiceNow that allows no-code integration with your ServiceNow instance or platform. So moving on in the workflow, as mentioned, the first ServiceNow task that we're going to hit is going to be updating the ServiceNow. That's going to update description. I'll show you a little bit more on that in a second. For context here, we're going to be running an audit, and that audit is going to be auditing the TrustSec and network access control configuration. We've set it up so that that will fail. So we have an if condition that if the audit does fail, we're going to take this path here in the workflow. So here's the next in the series of ServiceNow tasks in this workflow. This is the first around ITSM task, and this is going to open up a change request. The whole purpose of change requests is that everything is captured in the ServiceNow platform. It's documented, it's approved, things are noted, and you have management of your overall change operations. Even when a change is automated, you want that change. In this case, Gluware is making the change, but you want it recorded in ServiceNow. So we're going to open up a change request, and we're going to basically just put a note in saying that a NAC audit has failed and that it is assigning it to a specific group for approval. The next task is going to update that task, and we're basically updating parameters, including making the priority 1 or critical, making the risk level high because it is potential security vulnerability, and that it is in a state of assess. So at assess, the approvers have to go and look to assess the change and then ultimately approve it. So next we have maybe the most interesting task from a workflow standpoint, which is get change request. And get change request, if we look at the variables, is tracking change request, and it's tracking the approval. And if I just expand this here, again, we're creating a variable that we're going to be checking in ServiceNow, and we're going to be looking at the approval value. We wrap that task in a wait for operator. This wait for operator is waiting for the approval field to equal approved. So basically we're going to loop every 1 minute. We're going to check ServiceNow until we get an approval. If we fail or bomb out, we could put actions in the timeout branch. But this gives Gluware the ability to keep checking back until we get that approval. We will stop after 30 minutes, but in our demo, I will go make that approval and let it continue. So once we get the change request approved, we're going to be implementing the change. And I'm not going to dive deeply into this. Just understand that we are going to be assigning policies to the iOS-based devices and the Arista EOS-based devices, and we're going to be provisioning them. So here we're going to provision. That's wrapped with a try catch just in case there's any errors in provisioning. And then we're going to proceed on with updating ServiceNow to say that it's been implemented. So if we look at what's being updated, the state is changed to implemented. The change has been approved. Change has been implemented by Gluware. We're going to then continue the operation for the changes on the Meraki side, because those are API-based changes. Then we're going to run validation, making sure everything is good. And the final ServiceNow task here is a final update, changing the request to a state of review. So this is done. It's sitting in a review state to be closed, and that the NAC configuration has been applied and validated through Gluware. And then essentially that's the end of the workflow, and we can remove the data that was stored during the run of the workflow. So with that overall explanation, we're going to kick off this workflow by executing it. Once the workflow is running, I'm going to go to activity, and we're going to do the interactive tasks and also monitor the status of it as it's run. One of the first tasks that hits in the workflow is the selection of the targets. So that's an interactive task in this case. So I'm going to select all of the targets and move those in and hit save. So that is now running. And while it's running, I'm going to navigate over to ServiceNow and just show you that the network gear, that the descriptions are currently blank for the Cisco devices and Arista devices that are involved in this test. The other thing I'll quickly show you is that from a change request standpoint, we don't have any changes waiting to be approved. So we're going to see a new change open up. So let's go back to the Gluware side. And just for the interest of time in the video, I will speed up where we're waiting for things to complete to save some time. Okay, we're at the state where we've captured the configurations, we've updated the device details, and we've performed that sync with ServiceNow. So just to see that, we'll navigate very quickly here into the devices, the device manager view within Gluware. And here in the Gluware device manager, these devices, the Cisco and Arista devices, have been updated saying that the description is Zero Trust enabled device. So that's for TrustSec, and I will navigate over to the ServiceNow instance and navigate back into my CMDB, and I can see that that field has been synchronized. So when we talk about CMDB sync, we're saying, okay, ServiceNow has an asset inventory. This is my source of truth in terms of what is running in my network, but Gluware is actually talking to the network. So Gluware can update fields like states or serial numbers or other things that are discovered, and in this case, description that's classifying a device as Zero Trust enabled. So this is just showing that synchronization has happened. Let's go back and look at the workflow. Okay, so Gluware is now in a waiting state, and it's waiting to get the change request approval. So it's opened the change request, it's updated the change request, and now it's waiting for approval. So let's navigate into ServiceNow, into the change records, and I can see here that the weekly NAC audit has failed. So let's navigate into this change record. So I can see here, not only has it been opened, but as I mentioned, the priority has been moved to critical, the risk has moved to high, and it's assigned into the ECAB approval list, and the change is waiting for approval. So with that, on the approvers tab here, I can right click on my approver here and provide that approval. So by providing that approval, the Gluware workflow will continue to work through the changes. So we can navigate back into the Gluware workflow. So we see that the change request task has completed. It's now moving on into the rest of the workflow tasks. Okay, so we can see that the workflow has completed, running 9 minutes and 48 seconds. If I scroll down through the task, we're looking at the task view here of the workflow. So after we opened up that change request and had it approved, Gluware went through and provisioned those devices. It then updated the change request as implemented and completed out the verification, as well as a final update, putting the state to review, and with the closed notes as NAC config has been applied. So let's take a look at that. And if we just navigate back to change all. So we'll navigate back into this last change request that we're just working with here. And we can see that the change has been approved. It's already been implemented and now in reviewed state. It's been approved and the change has been implemented by Gluware. So it's in the final approval state, and the approver can go in, or the reviewer can go in and close it at this point. And with that, this concludes the highlight demo of Gluware integration with ServiceNow, both the CMDB sync as well as the ITSM for process management and approval. Thank you for your time and interest in Gluware. For more information, visit gluware.com. Thank you.